Before you even decide whether to trust what I'm about to say, let me give you a warning that almost no one listens to. If at any point during this video you feel irritated, defensive, or tempted to say this doesn't apply to me, that's the exact moment this content is working on you. Because the strongest psychological grip doesn't feel like fear, it feels like rejection of the idea that you could be influenced at all. And if you're still listening right now, congratulations, you've already passed the first filter most people fail. What we talked about earlier wasn't theory. It wasn't motivation. It wasn't exaggeration. It was the operating system running underneath modern power. Because in real life, people are not controlled through force anymore. They're controlled through identity, emotion, and timing. You don't lose freedom all at once. You lose it in small emotional trades. You trade clarity for comfort. You trade independence for belonging. You trade long-term control for short-term relief. And every system, political, social, corporate, digital, knows this. Think about how authority actually works in the real world. Your boss doesn't need to threaten you every day. They only need to remind you occasionally that you are replaceable. Not directly, subtly. A comment about how competitive the market is. A story about someone who didn't fit the culture. A pause when you ask for something reasonable. That's enough. Your brain fills the rest. You start overworking, under-asking, self-correcting before anyone even tells you to. At that point, control is complete because supervision is no longer required. You've internalized it. The same mechanism destroys relationships, especially in modern dating culture. One person starts pulling back emotionally, not disappearing completely, just enough to create uncertainty. No confrontación, no explanación, just distance. The other person feels the shift and starts chasing clarity, reassurance, validation. They send longer messages. They over-explain. They compromise values. The one who cares less gains leverage, not because they are stronger, but because uncertainty hijacks the nervous system faster than logic can respond. This isn't love. This is emotional economics. Now let's talk about social media, because this is where most people lose without ever realizing they were in a game. Platforms don't want your time. They want your emotional predictability. Anger keeps you scrolling. Fear keeps you checking. Validation keeps you addicted. That's why calm, balanced content rarely goes viral. It doesn't trigger. And anything that doesn't trigger doesn't control. Algorithms don't reward truth. They reward reaction. And when your daily emotional diet is being shaped by systems optimized for outrage and dopamine, your worldview slowly stops being yours. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Manipulation works best on people who believe they are self-aware. Because self-awareness without discipline becomes arrogance. You start assuming that knowing the trick means you're immune to it. You're not. Knowing how gravity works doesn't stop you from falling if you step off a cliff. Awareness only gives you a window to resist, but resistance requires emotional control, not intelligence. This is why public arguments are never about facts anymore. Facts don't move people. Identity does. If I attach an idea to who you think you are, you'll defend it even when it hurts you. That's why people stay loyal to failing ideologies, toxic communities, broken systems. Leaving would mean admitting they were influenced. And the ego would rather stay trapped than feel humiliated. So people double down. They rationalize. They attack dissent. Not because they're evil, but because their identity is under threat. Control always hides behind moral language. It doesn't say, obey me. It says, be a good person. It doesn't say, don't question. It says, this is for your safety. It doesn't say you're being used. It says, this is normal. And the moment something feels normal, resistance drops. That's the end game of influence, to make control feel ordinary. Remember the concept of framed choice we discussed earlier? This is where it scales. Society doesn't tell you what to think. It tells you what conversations are acceptable. It doesn't ban ideas, it buries them. It doesn't force opinions. It rewards certain ones with attention and punishes others with silence. And silence, as you already know, is one of the most powerful psychological weapons ever created. People will conform just to stop feeling invisible. Now here's the line that separates people who stay controlled from people who don't. Control people ask, what should I think? Free people ask, who benefits if I think this? That single question dissolves most manipulation instantly. Because every emotional push has a destination. Every sense of urgency has a designer. Every outrage cycle has someone collecting power while you're busy reacting. This isn't about becoming cold or paranoid. It's about precision. It's about slowing emotional responses just enough to see the mechanism at work. The moment you stop reacting immediately, the leverage shifts. Silence becomes your tool instead of your weakness. Calm becomes unsettling to people who rely on your emotional predictability. And once you're no longer predictable, you're difficult to control. Most people never reach this point, not because it's hard to understand, but because it's uncomfortable to practice. Emotional discipline feels empty at first. There's no dopamine rush and restraint. There's no applause for staying neutral. But over time, something changes. You stop being pulled into arguments you didn't choose. You stop chasing validation from people who benefit from your insecurity. You start choosing responses instead of reactions. And that's real power, the quiet kind that, if you've stayed until this point, understand this clearly. This isn't content for entertainment. This is a skill. And like any skill, it only works if you apply it when it matters most. During conflict, pressure, attraction, authority, and fear. In the next part, we'll take this out of theory entirely and break it down into real situations, conversations, negotiations, social pressure, and digital influence, so you can see exactly when to speak, when to stay silent, when to disengage, and when to take control without ever raising your voice. Stay focused. Don't rush, because the people who move fast emotionally spend their lives being moved by others. And the ones who learn to pause decide the direction. If you stayed this long, it means you're not here for entertainment. You're here because something clicked. Most people leave the moment a video challenges their sense of control. You didn't. That already puts you in a different category. So if this changed the way you see influence, power, or your own reactions, don't just scroll away and forget it. Hit like so this message reaches people who need awareness more than comfort. And subscribe. Not for motivation, not for hype, but for skills that actually protect you in the real world. Because knowledge only helps when you keep exposing yourself to it. And the people who stay subscribed are the ones who stop getting played. If you stayed this long, it means you're not here for entertainment. You're here because something clicked. Most people leave the moment a video challenges their sense of control. You didn't. That already puts you in a different category. So if this changed the way you see influence, power, or your own reactions, don't just scroll away and forget it. Hit like so this message reaches people who need awareness more than comfort, and subscribe. Not for motivation, not for hype, but for skills that actually protect you in the real world. Because knowledge only helps when you keep exposing yourself to it. And the people who stay subscribed are the ones who stop getting played.